In 37 years of studying the subconscious mind, I've discovered something that will shock you. 94% of your prayers go unanswered not because God isn't listening, but because you're strangling them with worry. Tonight, you'll learn the one release technique that activates what I call divine automation, where your good comes to you effortlessly. My friend, if you've been praying and affirming and visualizing but still feel like you're pushing against a wall, this message is for you. You've been taught to hold your vision firmly, to never give up, to keep believing no matter what. But what if I told you that this very approach, this white-knuckled grip on your desires, is the exact thing blocking your miracle? You see, I've worked with thousands of people over the decades. Desperate housewives praying for their marriages to heal, staying up all night wondering if their husbands will ever come back. Businessmen with corner offices and expensive suits who have everything except peace of mind, lying awake at 3 a.m., worrying about their next deal. Students hoping for better grades, cramming for exams, while silently panicking about their future. Mothers praying for their children's safety, checking on them obsessively because fear has consumed their hearts. People from every walk of life, all struggling with the same problem. The harder they try, the more elusive their desires become. Their prayers feel desperate rather than peaceful. They know about the law of attraction, they've read all the books, they've watched all the videos, but something's still missing. They're doing everything they think they should be doing, but their lives aren't changing. In fact, many of them tell me they feel more frustrated now than before they learned about spiritual laws. Dr. Murphy, they say, I'm affirming daily, I'm visualizing, I'm being grateful, but where are my results? Here's what most spiritual teachers won't tell you, what they don't understand themselves. Unlike manifestation coaches who focus on getting, who teach you techniques to grab and acquire and pull your desires toward you, I'm going to show you the divine science of receiving. This isn't positive thinking, this is what I call conscious surrender based on 40 years studying the subconscious mind and the deeper mysteries of how reality actually works. Most people try to program their subconscious mind like it's some kind of computer they can control. They think if they just say the right words enough times, if they just visualize clearly enough, if they just believe hard enough, they can force their subconscious to deliver what they want. But tonight, you'll learn to trust it completely, to work with its infinite intelligence rather than against it. I've seen this principle work for thousands of people, and by the end of tonight you'll understand why Jesus said, ask, believing you have received. The secret is in that past tense. He didn't say, ask, believing you will receive someday, if you're good enough. He said have received, past tense. Your good is already prepared in the invisible realm, already completed in divine mind. You just need to know how to stop interfering with its natural flow to you. Let me tell you about a time early in my career, when I learned this lesson the hard way. When life forced me to discover what I now know to be one of the most powerful spiritual principles in existence. I was struggling financially, barely making ends meet as a young minister in a small congregation. My salary was so meager I could barely afford rent, let alone the books I needed for my research or the proper clothes for my position. Every night, I would get on my knees in my tiny apartment and pray desperately for money to pay my bills. I would plead with God like a beggar on the street corner. Please, I need money now. I must have it. I can't go on like this. How can I serve your people if I can't even take care of myself? I would visualize money coming to me. I would affirm, I am prosperous, over and over until my throat was hoarse. Night after night, week after week, the same desperate routine. But here's what I didn't understand then. What no one had ever taught me. My anxiety was canceling out my faith. My subconscious mind wasn't listening to the words I was speaking, it was reading the emotional vibration behind those words. And that vibration was pure desperation, lack, and fear. So that's exactly what my subconscious delivered back to me. More situations to feel desperate about, more experiences of lack, more reasons to be afraid. You see, your subconscious mind is like a faithful servant who takes your dominant, emotional state as a command. When I prayed with desperation, I was commanding my subconscious to create more desperation. When I affirmed prosperity while feeling poor, I was sending mixed signals that confused and neutralized the entire process. One night, after months of this fruitless struggle, I collapsed in my worn armchair, exhausted not just in body but in spirit. I felt like Jacob wrestling with the angel, except I was losing. I looked up at the ceiling of my little room and just gave up. Not gave up on God, not gave up on my dreams, but gave up on trying to control everything. God, I said. And my voice was different now, not pleading, not demanding, just talking to a friend. I don't know what else to do. I'm tired of fighting this battle. I'm tired of trying to figure out how you're supposed to work. If you want me to have money to serve your people, then I trust you to provide it. If not, then I guess I'll serve in poverty. I give this whole situation to you. I'm done trying to be God. And then something miraculous happened. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Not the peace of getting what I wanted, but the peace of finally letting go of the burden I'd been carrying. I went to bed and slept more deeply than I had in ages, no longer wrestling with worry, no longer trying to solve what seemed unsolvable. Within a week, not months, not years, but 7 days, 3 unexpected opportunities appeared like flowers blooming after rain. First, a speaking engagement I'd completely forgotten about from a church in another city. The pastor called to confirm, and mentioned the honorarium was 3 times what I'd expected. Second, a letter arrived, informing me of a small inheritance from a distant relative I barely knew, an elderly aunt who had remembered me in her will. Third, a theology student approached me after Sunday service, asking if I would tutor him privately in biblical interpretation. He offered to pay me more per hour than I was making in a full day at my regular job. The money came not because I had finally figured out the right words to say, not because I had visualized more clearly or affirmed more passionately. It came because I had finally gotten out of my own way. I had stopped interfering with the natural flow of abundance that was always trying to reach me. That's when I discovered what I call the divine release principle. When you truly surrender your desire to the infinite intelligence of your subconscious mind, when you stop interfering with worry and desperation, and the need to control every detail, miracles begin to flow as naturally as water flows downhill. But let me share another story that illustrates this principle even more powerfully, a story that changed not just one life but an entire family legacy. A woman came to see me several years ago, and I'll never forget the pain in her eyes. Her name was Sarah, and she'd been trying to have children for 8 long years. 8 years of fertility treatments that drained their savings. 8 years of hormone shots that made her feel like a stranger in her own body. 8 years of medical procedures, tests, consultations with specialists, experimental treatments that promised hope but delivered disappointment. Every month was the same cruel cycle. Hope rising with the calendar, anxiety building as the days passed, and then heartbreak when nature delivered its monthly reminder that she remained childless. Her marriage was strained to the breaking point. Her husband tried to be supportive, but she could see the sadness in his eyes too. Family gatherings became torture chambers where every baby announcement felt like a personal attack from the universe. "Dr. Murphy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I pray every day for a baby. I have a whole ritual. I light candles, I visualize myself pregnant, I hold baby clothes I've bought in hope. I talk to my empty womb like there's already a child there. I affirm, I am already a mother, hundreds of times a day. I've tried everything: fertility diets, acupuncture, meditation, crystal healing, but nothing happens. What am I doing wrong? Doesn't God want me to be a mother?" I could feel the desperation radiating from her like heat from a furnace. Her desire for a child had transformed from a natural longing into an obsession that consumed her every waking moment. She checked her basal temperature religiously. She analyzed every symptom, every change in her body. She had turned the beautiful mystery of creating life into a scientific project driven by anxiety and control. I explained to her something that shocked her at first. Her subconscious mind was not responding to her words about wanting a baby. It was responding to her dominant feeling, which was the fear that she would never have one. Every time she looked at baby clothes, she felt the pain of emptiness. Every time she visualized herself pregnant, underneath the hope was the terror that it would never happen. Every time she affirmed, "I am a mother," her heart was screaming, "But I'm not, and I may never be." Her subconscious mind, being the perfect mirror it is, was reflecting back exactly what she was putting in, the experience of wanting but not having, of hoping but not receiving. The more desperately she tried to get pregnant, the more her body and mind became convinced that pregnancy was something difficult and elusive. I taught her the release technique I'm going to share with you tonight, and it wasn't easy for her at first. When you've been trying to control something for 8 years, surrender feels like giving up, like admitting defeat. But gradually, she began to understand the difference between giving up on her dream and giving up her stranglehold on how and when that dream would manifest. Instead of desperately demanding a child from the universe, she learned to offer her desire up to divine love with complete trust. "Divine love," she would say each morning, "I give my longing for motherhood completely to you. If it's in my highest good to have a child, I trust you to provide one in perfect timing. If not, I trust that you have something even better planned for my life." She stopped checking her fertility calendar obsessively. She packed away the baby clothes that had become symbols of lack rather than hope. She stopped analyzing every symptom and sign. Instead, she began to focus on loving herself exactly as she was, childless but complete, worthwhile whether she ever became a mother or not. She released the timeline to divine wisdom. She stopped trying to force her body to conform to her schedule. She began to see children everywhere, not as reminders of what she didn't have, but as expressions of the divine creativity that flows through all life. She volunteered at a children's hospital, pouring her maternal love into babies whose own mothers couldn't care for them. 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, she called me with wonder in her voice. "Dr. Murphy," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell, "I'm pregnant." But here's the beautiful part. She wasn't calling because she was desperate to share good news. She was calling because she had learned to trust so completely in divine timing, that even this miracle felt natural, expected, like a flower blooming in its proper season. The pregnancy was different too. None of the anxiety that had plagued her trying to conceive years. No obsessive monitoring, no fear-based thinking. Just a deep trust that the same divine intelligence that had brought this child to her would see the pregnancy through to its perfect completion. 9 months later, she delivered a healthy baby girl who brought joy not just to her family but to everyone who knew the story of faith and surrender that preceded her arrival. But that's not the end of the story. 2 years later, Sarah called again. She was pregnant with her second child, conceived naturally, without effort, without the desperate measures that had failed her for so many years. Her body, freed from the stress of anxiety and control, had become a perfect vessel for the divine creative process. Now, here's one more story that changed my understanding forever. A story about divine timing that I return to whenever I need to remember the perfect orchestration of infinite intelligence. My father owned a small dry goods business during the Great Depression, a little shop that had been in our family for 2 generations. It wasn't much to look at: narrow aisles, creaky wooden floors, merchandise stacked to the ceiling, but it was our livelihood and our pride. When the economic crash hit, customers stopped coming. People who had been loyal for years could no longer afford even basic necessities. Week after week, the cash register stayed mostly silent. Dad would stand behind the counter, watching the empty street through windows that needed washing, counting and recounting the same dwindling bills in the till. For months, he struggled to keep the business afloat, working 18-hour days, borrowing money from relatives who had little to spare, pushing himself to the point of exhaustion, trying to think of new ways to attract customers. He cut prices until he was barely breaking even on the few sales he made. He extended credit to customers who he knew probably couldn't pay him back. He tried advertising in the local paper with money he couldn't afford to spend. Every night, he would come home with worry etched in every line of his face. At dinner he would bow his head and pray, but his prayers were filled with the same fear and desperation I had experienced in my own financial struggles. "Lord, please don't let us lose the store. Please bring customers back. Please help me find a way to save what my father built." I watched him growing thinner, more anxious, more defeated with each passing day. The business that had been his joy was becoming his prison, and the weight of 3 generations of family legacy pressed down on his shoulders like a physical burden. One evening in late autumn, he sat down at our kitchen table after closing the store, and I could see that something had shifted in him. His face looked different, not defeated, but strangely peaceful. He looked at me and my mother, and said something I'll never forget. "You know, I've been fighting this battle for so long, I forgot that God might have a better plan for us than the one I've been trying to force. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to be smarter than divine intelligence." He closed his eyes, and I watched transformation happen in real time. The tension seemed to flow out of his shoulders. His breathing became deeper, more relaxed. When he opened his eyes, there was a clarity there I hadn't seen in months. "Divine love," he said aloud, including us in his prayer. "I give this business to you completely. I've been holding on so tightly, because I thought it was my job to save it, but maybe my job is just to trust you. Whatever you want for our family, whatever direction you want our lives to take, I accept completely. If you want us to keep the store, show us how. If you have something better planned, help us to see it and receive it gratefully. Within 2 weeks, and I want you to understand that this is not an exaggeration or a metaphor, this actually happened exactly as I'm telling you. A man knocked on our door. Dad had never seen him before, never heard his name. He introduced himself as a businessman from the capital city, someone who specialized in buying small businesses and transforming them into something larger. He had heard about our little store through a network of contacts we didn't even know existed. He'd been looking for exactly this type of location, this size building, in exactly this neighborhood for a venture he was planning. He wanted to buy not just the inventory, but the building, the fixtures, even the family name and reputation we'd built over the years. The offer he made was more money than Dad ever imagined. The business was worth enough to pay off all our debts, buy a house outright, and leave a substantial sum for investment in Dad's retirement. But more than that, this man had connections Dad never could have made, expansion plans Dad never could have conceived, resources and vision that would have been completely impossible for a small-town merchant to access. Looking back, I can see now that divine intelligence had been preparing this solution long before Dad learned to get out of the way. This buyer had been searching for months, for exactly what we had to offer. The contacts, the financing, the timing, the location, everything had been orchestrating itself in the invisible realm while Dad was struggling and worrying about problems that had already been solved in divine mind. But here's the crucial point. None of this could have happened while Dad was desperately clinging to his own limited solutions. His attachment to keeping the business exactly as it was, his fear of change, his belief that he had to solve everything himself, all of this was blocking the flow of the perfect solution that was trying to reach him. These stories illustrate 3 profound principles that will transform how you approach every desire in your life. 3 laws of manifestation that most people never learn because they're too busy trying to force outcomes instead of allowing them. First, you must understand why attachment blocks manifestation. This is perhaps the most misunderstood principle in all of spiritual teaching. People think that wanting something strongly is the same as faith, that desperation is proof of desire, but the opposite is true. Your subconscious mind doesn't respond to your words, it responds to your dominant emotional state. When you're desperately attached to an outcome, when you're white-knuckling your desire, when you're constantly checking and monitoring and worrying, the feeling you're broadcasting is lack, fear, and doubt. You're essentially sending the message, "This thing I want is so hard to get. It's so unlikely to happen." Flowery affirmations that they don't even believe themselves. The subconscious rejects what feels forced. But a short phrase, spoken with sincerity, repeated daily, is like a hammer striking the same spot on a stone. One strike may do nothing, but strike again and again in the same place, and the stone will crack. The old program of poverty and fear will break, and the new belief will take its place. Let me give you an example. Murphy once told the story of a young salesgirl who could not make sales. Every time she approached a customer, she felt weak, unworthy, convinced they would not listen. And of course, her subconscious, programmed with failure, carried out that belief. Then she began to affirm, "I am successful. I am worthy." She repeated it daily, morning and night, until the words began to feel real. At first, she resisted. The old voice whispered, "This isn't true." But she persisted. Slowly, the subconscious accepted the new command. Her attitude changed. Her voice grew confident. Her customers responded. Soon, her sales increased, and her whole life turned around. What changed? Not the market, not the customers, but the inner program. She wrote a new command into her subconscious with affirmation. Now, here's the WHY. Affirmations work because the subconscious is impressionable. It accepts repeated ideas as facts, especially when spoken with emotion. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between truth and lie. It only knows what is repeated and believed. That's why negative affirmations like, "I can't do this," or "I'll never succeed," are so dangerous. They are commands. But the same law works for your good when you reverse it. Here's the what. Affirmations that stick are short, positive, present tense, and emotional. Not, "I will be wealthy," which places the good in the future, but, "I am wealthy now," which places it in the present. Not, "I want peace," which declares lack, but, "I am peace," which declares possession. The subconscious responds to "I am" because it is identity. It hears "I am" and says, "So be it." And here's the how. Speak your affirmations daily, especially in the drowsy state before sleep and after waking, when the subconscious is most open. Speak them slowly, with feeling, as though they are already true. Repeat them until the words sink below the surface and become natural. Do not force belief, let it grow. At first, it may feel strange, but persistence is the key. 30 days of consistent affirmation will begin to shift the subconscious, and the shift within will soon be reflected without. So ask yourself now, what command are you writing on your mind each day? Are you saying, "I am tired, I am broke, I am unlucky"? If so, change the command. Begin today with something simple. "I am wealthy, I am peace, I am success." Speak it, feel it, repeat it, and watch as your subconscious accepts it as law. Transition. And yet words alone, even when simple and powerful, are only one half of the formula. The subconscious also speaks in images, in pictures, in visions. To complete the conditioning, we must not only affirm with words, but also see with imagination. That is the work of visualization. Now that we have spoken of affirmations, the power of words repeated with feeling, we must turn to the second great pillar of the spiritual conditioning formula, visualization. For while words are powerful, words alone are not the natural language of the subconscious. The subconscious speaks in pictures. It dreams in images, it accepts symbols, it acts on visions. That is why a single vivid mental picture can do more to reprogram the mind than hours of lifeless repetition. When you imagine with intensity, when you see yourself already in possession of the good you desire, you are not pretending you are impressing. You are giving your subconscious a blueprint, and the subconscious, faithful and obedient, begins to build the outer reality to match that inner design. Think for a moment about how worry works. Worry is nothing more than visualization in reverse. A man imagines himself losing his job, and he pictures the shame, the struggle, the despair. He rehearses it in his mind again and again until he feels it in his body, and then the subconscious, taking that picture as a command, moves events to bring it about. Another woman imagines her body breaking down, imagines disease spreading, imagines herself in weakness, and her subconscious responds by creating symptoms that mirror the vision. Do you see? Worry is visualization of what you don't want, carried out faithfully by the subconscious. The same law, used positively, becomes your path to healing, abundance, and peace. Murphy often shared the story of when he wanted to sell his house. He didn't chase buyers frantically, he didn't beg or plead. Instead, he went into his imagination and pictured a bold "sold" sign standing in front of the property. He saw it clearly, felt the relief, the joy, the certainty of the sale. And soon after, the buyer appeared, and the house was sold. What happened? The subconscious accepted the picture and moved to fulfill it. That is the law. Whatever image you consistently hold, with faith and emotion, must eventually show itself in the outer world. Here is the why. Visualization works because the subconscious cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined picture and a real experience. If you imagine yourself giving a speech, your heart may race, your palms may sweat, your body responds as if it were real. The subconscious does not say, "This is only imagination." It accepts the image as fact and sets the body and circumstances in line with it. That is why athletes rehearse their performance mentally. Why great musicians imagine the concert before stepping on stage. Why successful men and women live the end result in their minds before they see it outwardly. The mind rehearses, the subconscious accepts, the body and world follow. Here is the what. Visualization is the practice of seeing the desired result as already complete. Not someday in the future, but now. Not "I will be healthy," but "I see myself walking strong, laughing, free." Not "I hope to be wealthy," but "I see myself giving, enjoying, free of debt." Not "I want peace," but "I see myself calm, smiling, resting in serenity." The key is to live in the end, to picture the result as though it has already happened. And here is the how. Find a quiet place, close your eyes, and enter the drowsy state, the relaxed condition between waking and sleep. In this state, the conscious mind is quiet, and the subconscious is open. Then, form a clear picture of your desired outcome. Add detail, see the colors, hear the sounds, feel the textures. Imagine yourself inside the picture, not watching from afar, but living it. Feel the joy, the gratitude, the relief, as though it is real. Do not strain, do not beg. Simply imagine it until the feeling grows. Repeat this daily for 30 days, and the subconscious will accept the image as reality. Once accepted, the law of life will bring it into expression. So ask yourself, what pictures have you been living in your mind? Are you rehearsing failure or success? Are you picturing lack or abundance? Are you seeing yourself weak or strong? Whatever picture you hold, your subconscious will build. Change the picture, and you change the outcome. It is that simple, and that profound. Transition. And yet, as powerful as visualization is, there is one element that seals it, that tells the subconscious the prayer is already answered, that the picture is already true. That element is gratitude, the signal of completion. Now we come to the third element of the spiritual conditioning formula, and it is the one that seals the work of the other two. Affirmation plants the seed, visualization paints the picture, but gratitude is the signal to the subconscious that the prayer is finished, that the seed is already sprouting, that the picture is already real. Gratitude is not merely good manners. Gratitude is a spiritual vibration, a mental atmosphere, a law of completion. When you give thanks in advance, you are telling your subconscious, "This is already mine." And the subconscious, hearing that vibration, accepts it as fact and begins to align your outer life to match it. Gratitude does not wait until the good appears. It brings the good into being by declaring it already done. Think about how strange it would be for a farmer to plant a seed and then doubt every day whether it will grow. A wise farmer trusts the process. He waters the seed, tends the soil, and gives thanks for the harvest long before it appears. Gratitude is that same trust applied to the mind. It is saying, "The law is working. The harvest is certain. I thank you now." This attitude of gratitude creates peace within, and peace is the soil in which prosperity grows. Doubt creates tension. Fear creates resistance. But gratitude relaxes the mind and opens the channels of supply. Murphy often taught people to end their affirmations with gratitude. If you affirm, "I am wealthy, wealth flows to me now," then add, "I give thanks for this abundance." That final phrase transforms the affirmation from a wish into a reality. Why? Because the subconscious hears gratitude as proof that you already believe. Gratitude is not hoping, it is knowing. Gratitude is not reaching, it is receiving. And once the subconscious accepts that feeling of receiving, the outer result cannot be delayed. I once knew a man who prayed daily for money, but he always prayed with desperation. His words were full of lack. "God, Please send me money, I need it. I don't know how I'll survive. His subconscious only heard the vibration of lack, and so his lack continued. When he learned to change his approach, to begin saying, "Thank you, Father, that money flows to me now. Thank you that all my needs are met. Thank you, that abundance is mine already," everything shifted. At first he felt he was pretending, but he persisted. He kept thanking, day after day. Soon, small blessings began to appear: a bill paid unexpectedly, a gift, a new opportunity. Then larger blessings followed. What changed? Not the world, but his inner state. Gratitude had replaced desperation, and the subconscious responded accordingly. And here is another truth. Gratitude dissolves fear and resentment. You cannot be grateful and fearful at the same time. You cannot be grateful and resentful at the same time. Gratitude lifts you to a higher vibration, where faith feels natural, where abundance feels certain. It clears the soil of poisons and fills it with life. That is why daily gratitude, even for the simplest things, is so transformative. Thank you for breath. Thank you for sunlight. Thank you for love. Thank you for wealth flowing now. These words create an atmosphere in which prosperity cannot help but grow. So, here is the WHY. Gratitude works because it signals completion. It tells the subconscious that the seed is already planted and the harvest is assured. Here is the what. Gratitude must be practiced daily, not just when something good happens, but in advance, before the evidence appears. And here is the how. Build gratitude into your practice. Write it in a journal. Speak it aloud in prayer. Whisper it in your heart throughout the day. When you affirm, add thanks. When you visualize, add thanks. When you wake in the morning, give thanks. When you close your eyes at night, give thanks. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Soon, gratitude becomes your atmosphere, your state of being. And when gratitude is your state, prosperity is your experience. Because the subconscious has no choice but to bring you more of what you are constantly thanking for. Transition. So now we have words to command, images to shape, and gratitude to seal. But when is the best time to do this work? When is the subconscious most open, most receptive, most ready to accept new truth? That is what we must explore next. The drowsy state advantage. Now that we have seen how affirmation plants the seed, visualization shapes the picture, and gratitude seals the prayer, we must ask an important question: when is the best time to do this work? When is the subconscious most open, most fertile, most ready to accept the impressions we offer? The answer is simple, but it is profound. The subconscious is most receptive in the moments just before sleep and just after waking, when the mind is drowsy, relaxed, quiet, and the boundary between the conscious and the subconscious is thin. In those moments you can impress your desires on the deeper mind with far less effort, and the suggestions sink in quickly and deeply, taking root almost immediately. That is why Murphy called this the drowsy state advantage, and it is why so many who have practiced this method report results that feel almost miraculous. Think about what usually happens as people drift off to sleep. They lie in bed replaying the day's troubles, rehearsing arguments, worrying about bills, fearing tomorrow. And what are they doing in that state? They are planting those very images directly into the subconscious, which works on them all night long. No wonder they wake up anxious. No wonder they carry the same burdens day after day. The soil is fertile, but they are planting weeds. Yet the same law that produces weeds will produce roses if you give it roses. Instead of feeding your subconscious with fear, you can feed it with faith. Instead of replaying problems, you can replay solutions. Instead of rehearsing lack, you can rehearse abundance. And if you do this in the drowsy state, the results will come far faster because the subconscious receives the suggestion without argument. Murphy told the story of a singer who was crippled with stage fright. No amount of practice during the day could help her because her conscious mind was filled with fear. But at night, as she drifted toward sleep, she began to picture herself on stage, singing with confidence, hearing the applause, bowing with joy. She repeated this nightly, in the drowsy state, until the subconscious accepted it. When the time came to perform, the fear was gone. The subconscious had replaced the old program with a new one. That is the power of the drowsy state. Here is the WHY. The conscious mind, with all its doubts and arguments, grows quiet in the drowsy state. The gatekeeper relaxes. The subconscious, always listening, becomes more open. What you whisper to yourself in that moment bypasses resistance and is accepted as truth. Here is the what. You must use those moments to impress the ideas you want most deeply rooted, your affirmations, your visualizations, your gratitude. And here is the how. As you lie in bed before sleep, close your eyes and gently repeat your affirmation. See the picture of your desire as already fulfilled. Feel gratitude as though it is already done. Do not strain. Do not force. Let it be gentle, like a lullaby to your mind. Drift into sleep with that feeling, and the subconscious will work on it all night long. Do the same in the morning, before your conscious mind fills with the noise of the day. Spend just a few minutes planting the seed, and you will carry that vibration with you for hours. I once knew a man who had been plagued with worry for years. He lay awake every night rehearsing disasters, losing his job, falling ill, failing his family. His subconscious was saturated with fear. When he learned this method, he replaced the fear with faith. Each night before sleep he affirmed, "I am safe, I am prospered, I am free." He pictured himself happy, surrounded by love, living in abundance. At first, it felt strange, because fear had been his habit. But he persisted. After 30 days, he noticed he slept more peacefully. His anxiety began to fade. Within months, new opportunities appeared. His finances improved. His health lifted. What changed? Not the world, but the soil of his subconscious, and it was changed by what he planted in the drowsy state. So I ask you, what are you feeding your mind in those sacred moments before sleep and after waking? Are you pouring poison into the soil? Or are you planting roses? For the law does not rest. The subconscious works day and night. You cannot stop it from working, but you can direct what it works on. Give it fear, and it will multiply fear. Give it faith, and it will multiply faith. The choice is always yours, and the drowsy state is your greatest opportunity. Transition. And now that we have seen the power of words, the force of images, the seal of gratitude, and the timing of the drowsy state, we must bring them together into one unified practice. This is the formula itself, layered and complete, simple enough to do in minutes, powerful enough to transform your life in 30 days. Now that we have walked through each element, the spoken word of affirmation, the living picture of visualization, the seal of gratitude, and the gateway of the drowsy state, we must now bring them together into one whole practice, a formula that is simple enough to be done in a few minutes each day, and yet so powerful that 30 days of faithful application can reshape the entire course of your life. This is the spiritual conditioning formula, and it works not because of chance, not because of luck, but because it follows law. Just as exercise conditions the body through repetition, this practice conditions the mind, and when the mind is conditioned, the body, the circumstances, the opportunities of life cannot help but follow. Think of it as layering, like building a house. The foundation is affirmation, short, simple words spoken with faith. This is the first layer, the command given to the subconscious. On that foundation, you build the walls through visualization, seeing the finished result as already complete, living inside the picture with all your senses. Then you place the roof through gratitude, sealing the practice by declaring that the work is done, thanking for it as though it were already received. And finally, you choose the right time to build in the drowsy state, when the subconscious is most open, most receptive, most ready to accept the new design. Each part is important, but together they form a structure so strong that the old program cannot stand against it. Here is how you practice. In the morning, before the noise of the file world enters your mind, take just 5 minutes. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. Speak your affirmation slowly, with feeling. I am wealthy. I am peace. I am successful. I am love. Keep it short, simple, and clear. Then, see the picture yourself living the life you desire. Picture it as if it is happening now. Let yourself feel the joy of it, the gratitude of it, the relief of it. And as you feel, whisper, thank you, thank you, thank you. Then rise and carry that vibration into your day. In the evening, as you drift into sleep, repeat the process. Affirm again, picture again, feel again, give thanks again. Let the last impression on your mind be the seed you want the subconscious to work on all night, that is all. 10 to 15 minutes daily, faithfully repeated for 30 days, and the soil of your mind will be transformed. I once counseled a woman who said she had no time for such practices. She worked long hours, cared for her children, and by night she was exhausted. But I told her, give me 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night. She agreed. At first, she thought it was too little to make a difference. But she practiced anyway. She affirmed wealth. She visualized peace. She gave thanks. Within a few weeks, she noticed a lightness in her spirit. Soon after, she received an unexpected promotion. Then, opportunities began to flow to her. She said, it's as if the world has shifted. But the world had not shifted, her subconscious had, and the outer life simply mirrored the inner. The power of this formula is not in its length but in its consistency. You do not need hours of meditation. You do not need endless rituals. You need simple, consistent conditioning. Just as brushing your teeth daily keeps them clean, this mental brushing keeps the subconscious clear of weeds and filled with seeds of abundance. It is the daily discipline, the quiet faithfulness, that produces results. So here is the WHY. Layering the elements creates a complete practice that covers every channel through which the subconscious is impressed: word, image, feeling, and timing. Here is the what. 10 to 15 minutes daily of affirmation, visualization, gratitude, practiced especially in the drowsy state. And here is the how. Commit to 30 days straight, without skipping, without wavering, and trust the process. The results may begin subtly: peace, calm, small synchronicities, but they will grow, and soon the harvest will be undeniable. So I ask you now, can you give yourself 15 minutes a day for 30 days? Can you invest this small time to unlock a lifetime of abundance? For the law is certain. The soil is ready. The seed is waiting. All that is required is your daily practice, transition. And yet, even with such a simple and powerful formula, many still fail. Why? Because hidden poisons, envy, resentment, fear, guilt choke out the new growth. Before we can see the harvest, we must remove the poisons. Let us uncover them now. Now that we have laid the foundation of the spiritual conditioning formula, we must address a problem that ruins more gardens of the mind than almost anything else. For you may affirm faithfully, you may visualize with feeling, you may give thanks with sincerity, but if there is poison in the soil, the seed cannot grow. And one of the most common poisons is envy. Envy is not simply a fleeting thought of comparison. It is a vibration of lack, a declaration of scarcity, a signal to the subconscious that says, there is not enough for me. When you look at the wealth of another and feel bitterness, when you see someone succeed and you resent it, when you hear of someone's blessings and you sigh, why them and not me? You are poisoning your own soil. The subconscious, impartial as always, hears the resentment, feels the bitterness, and interprets it as your command. Keep wealth away from me. And so, no matter how diligently you affirm or visualize, the harvest is strangled, because envy has shut the door. Murphy often warned that envy places you in a negative position. He explained that to resent another's success is to affirm lack for yourself. The subconscious does not differentiate between your feelings toward another and your feelings toward yourself. If you bless another's success, you are affirming success for yourself. If you curse another's prosperity, you are cursing your own. For the law always returns to you what you impress upon it, regardless of where you think you aimed it. Envy, then, is a boomerang. You throw it at another, but it circles back and strikes you. I once knew a man who could never seem to prosper. Every time a friend bought a new car, he muttered under his breath, "He doesn't deserve it." Every time a colleague received a promotion, he fumed, "Some people have all the luck." He thought he was only criticizing them, but in truth he was cursing himself. His subconscious was recording every bitter word as a command. I do not deserve prosperity. I repel success. His life reflected it. Doors closed, money slipped away, and bitterness deepened. When he finally learned the truth, I told him, instead of cursing, start blessing. Every time you see someone prosper, say quietly, "I am grateful for their success, and mine is on the way." At first it felt false to him, because envy had been his habit for years, but he persisted. Slowly, his inner state shifted. The bitterness softened, gratitude grew, and soon, opportunities began to flow his way. The law had not changed, he had. Here is the why. Envy blocks prosperity because it impresses scarcity on the subconscious. Here is the what. To reverse envy, you must bless. You must rejoice. You must be glad for the good of others, as though it were your own. And here is the how. Every time you see someone prosper, instead of shrinking with resentment, affirm silently, "I rejoice in their success. I bless their wealth. I give thanks that abundance is flowing to me also." This simple practice transforms poison into fertilizer. For what you bless, you draw near, and what you resent, you repel. Think of the farmer again. Imagine him looking at his neighbor's field, green with harvest, and cursing it. Does that curse help his own field grow? Of course not. His curse does nothing but sour his own soil. But if he looks at the same field and says, "How wonderful! The law is working. My field will produce too," his own soil is enriched by his faith. Envy chokes. Blessing nourishes. The choice is always yours. So I say to you now, never envy the wealth, the health, the joy of another. Celebrate it. Let their prosperity be proof that the law works. Let their blessing be evidence that yours is on the way. For when you bless abundance, you attract it, and when you resent it, you shut it out. Transition. But envy is only the first poison. There is another just as destructive, that binds the heart to the past and fills the soil of the subconscious with bitterness. It is the poison of resentment. Let us now uncover how resentment blocks your good, and how forgiveness can set you free. If envy poisons the soil by declaring lack, then resentment poisons the soil by binding you to the past. Resentment is the refusal to release. It is the clenching of the fist, the tightening of the jaw, the inner vow that says, "I will never forgive what was done to me." And while resentment pretends to punish the other, in truth it punishes only you. For the subconscious, ever listening, ever faithful, does not ask who the bitterness is directed toward. It simply accepts bitterness as your state and then reproduces it in your life. Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. It eats at your peace, it corrodes your joy, it blocks your prosperity. And as long as it remains, no amount of affirmation or visualization can take deep root, because the soil is sour. Murphy often told the story of a man who suffered from cancer, and when he spoke with him, he discovered that this man had carried hatred toward a family member for years. Every day he replayed the betrayal. Every day he rehearsed the wound, until the resentment became part of his very being. Murphy explained that unless he released this bitterness, unless he forgave, his subconscious would continue to reproduce the poison in his body. At first the man resisted. Forgiveness felt impossible, but slowly, he began to imagine himself shaking hands with his relative, wishing him well, blessing him, letting go. He repeated this visualization daily, especially in the drowsy state, until the feeling of forgiveness grew real. And as he released the resentment, his health improved, his body began to heal, and he lived far longer than doctors had expected. Forgiveness had freed him not just spiritually, but physically. Here is the why. Resentment blocks abundance because it chains your mind to the injury. You cannot move forward while you are looking backward. The subconscious does not argue with the picture you give it, it only reproduces it. If you keep replaying the wrong done to you, the subconscious accepts that wrong as your reality and keeps producing similar experiences. That is why people who live in resentment often find themselves in cycle after cycle of betrayal and disappointment. The law is impartial. It gives you what you dwell upon. Here is the what. To break resentment, you must forgive. And let me be clear. Forgiveness does not mean approving of the wrong, nor excusing it, nor pretending it never happened. Forgiveness means releasing it from your mind, letting it go so that it no longer controls you. It means saying, "This no longer has power over me." Forgiveness is freedom, and freedom is the atmosphere in which prosperity grows. Here is the how. Daily, especially before sleep, affirm and visualize forgiveness. Say, "I fully and freely forgive everyone, and I go free." Repeat it until the words sink in. Picture the person you resent surrounded by light, blessed, at peace, and imagine yourself smiling, free, released. At first it may feel false, but persistence will turn it real. And when the subconscious accepts it, you will feel a weight lift from your heart. Doors will open that were once shut. Peace will return. Abundance will flow. For forgiveness clears the channel through which life blesses you. I once knew a woman who carried bitterness against her ex-husband for years. She thought she was punishing him with her anger, but in truth, she was punishing herself. Every relationship she entered soured. Every business venture failed. When she finally decided to forgive not for him, but for herself, everything shifted. She began to affirm daily, "I forgive. I release. I am free." She visualized him happy and blessed, and herself joyful and light. Within months, her new business prospered, her health improved, and love returned to her life. What changed? Not the man she resented, but the soil of her subconscious. So I ask you, whom are you still holding in your heart with bitterness? Who lives rent-free in your mind, poisoning your peace? Whoever they are, let them go, release them, bless them, forgive them. For as long as you carry resentment, you are locking yourself out of the abundance that is your birthright. But when you forgive, the locks fall away, the channels open, and prosperity flows freely again. Transition. And yet resentment is not the only poison. There is another, darker still, that paints terrifying pictures on the mind, paralyzes action, and plants weeds that grow into disaster. It is the poison of fear. Let us uncover its grip and learn how to turn it into faith. Fear is perhaps the most crippling poison of them all, for it not only clouds the mind and drains the body, but it also paints images on the screen of the subconscious that the law of belief then brings into being. Fear is faith inverted. Faith says, "All things are working together for my good." Fear whispers, "Everything is turning against me." Faith sees the desired outcome and expects it. Fear sees the dreaded outcome and rehearses it. And because the subconscious does not argue, it simply accepts what you impress upon it. Fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The man who constantly fears sickness finds sickness at his door. The woman who constantly fears poverty finds her purse empty. The one who fears betrayal often lives in a cycle of broken trust. Fear plants the seed, waters it with emotion, and the subconscious, obedient as always, brings the harvest. Think about how vivid fear can be. A man lying awake at night imagines losing his job. He sees himself packing a box, walking out of the building, telling his family the bad news. He hears the conversations in his mind, feels the anxiety in his body. His heart races as though it were real. And the subconscious, which cannot distinguish between imagined and actual experience, accepts it as truth and begins to align circumstances toward that outcome. Another woman fears illness. She pictures herself frail, weak, confined. She rehearses the pain in her imagination until her body responds with symptoms that mirror the vision. She may call it fate, but it is law. She has been praying negatively, conditioning her subconscious for the very thing she dreads. Murphy often explained that the imagination is neutral. It will grow roses or weeds depending on what you plant. Fear is simply imagination used destructively. It is like a gardener who waters weeds every day and then wonders why the flowers wither. The weeds grow stronger not because the soil is cursed, but because they are fed. And in the same way, fear thrives on attention. The more you feed it with thought and feeling, the larger it becomes. But the moment you turn away and begin to plant faith instead, the weeds wither and the flowers bloom. Here is the WHY. Fear blocks prosperity because it plants pictures of failure that the subconscious accepts as orders. Here is the what. To overcome fear, you must replace it, not resist it. Fighting fear only feeds it, because what you fight, you focus on. But replacing fear with faith starves it, because the subconscious cannot hold two conflicting images at the same time. If fear says, I will fail, you calmly affirm, I am succeeding now. If fear says, I will lose, you declare, I am gaining. If fear says, I am weak, you affirm, I am strong in the power of God. Over time, the new seed takes root, the old weeds dry up, and the subconscious obeys the stronger impression. I once counseled a man who was constantly afraid of losing his business. Every day he visualized bankruptcy, saw himself ruined, imagined his family in poverty. Of course, his business suffered. When I told him to reverse the picture, to begin imagining clients coming in, money flowing, success building, he resisted at first. But that feels like lying, he said. I told him, fear is the lie, not faith. You have been lying to yourself with pictures of failure. Now tell yourself the truth that the law of abundance is working for you. He began to visualize prosperity in his own life. That shift, you felt that sense of relief, that moment of peace, that feeling of, yes, this is true. That's divine intelligence confirming that you're ready for this next level of spiritual growth. Your thumbs up also helps this message reach other people who need to hear it. There are thousands of people right now who are struggling with the same desperate attachment, the same white-knuckled grip on their desires that was blocking my manifestation all those years ago. When you like this video, you're helping to ensure that this message of hope and practical wisdom finds its way to someone who needs it today. And third, this is the most important action of all. I want you to share in the comments section below what you're ready to release to divine love right now. Don't just think about it, actually write it out. Sometimes the simple act of declaring your surrender in writing, of putting your commitment to trust into words that others can see, activates the miracle you've been waiting for. You don't have to share details that are too personal. You can simply write, I give my financial situation completely to divine love, or I give my health concerns completely to divine love, or I give my relationship desires completely to divine love. Whatever it is that you've been trying to control, whatever burden you've been carrying alone, declare your willingness to place it in infinitely capable hands. When you write your surrender statement in the comments, you're doing more than just sharing with me and the other viewers. You're making a public commitment to yourself. You're stating your intention clearly to your subconscious mind, and you're aligning your energy with trust and faith rather than worry and control. I read every single comment, and I often respond personally to people who are taking this step of faith. But more than that, this comment section has become a powerful community of people, supporting each other's spiritual growth, celebrating each other's breakthroughs, and offering encouragement during challenges. You'll be amazed at how supportive and understanding this community is. Many people have written to tell me that reading other people's surrender statements gave them the courage to release their own burdens. Others have shared that seeing evidence of divine intelligence working in other people's lives strengthened their own faith in the process. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable in your sharing. This is a safe space where people understand the journey from struggle to surrender, from anxiety to peace, from forcing to flowing. We're all learning together, and your willingness to share your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, my friend, you didn't find this video by accident. Divine intelligence guided you here because you're ready for this teaching, ready for this transformation, ready to discover the peace and power that come from learning to trust completely in love that never fails. The same force that spins the planets in their courses, that grows mighty oaks from tiny acorns, that beats your heart without your conscious control, is available to orchestrate your life in ways that exceed your wildest dreams. All you have to do is stop interfering with its perfect work through worry and impatience and the need to control every detail. Trust the process, trust the timing, trust the infinite wisdom that loves you more than you can love yourself. Your good is on its way to you right now, moving through channels you haven't thought of, being prepared by hands you cannot see, orchestrated by intelligence that knows exactly what will make you truly happy. Let go and let God. Release and receive. Give it completely to divine love, and watch miracles unfold in your life. Until we meet again, remember that you are loved, you are guided, and you are never alone on this beautiful journey of awakening to your true spiritual power. Divine love is working for you right now. Trust it completely, and prepare to be amazed by what unfolds. Blessings and peace to you, my dear friend. Blessings and peace. But before we part tonight, I feel compelled to share with you some deeper mysteries about the nature of surrender that have taken me decades to fully understand. What I'm about to reveal goes beyond simple manifestation techniques. This touches the very heart of how consciousness itself creates reality, how your individual mind connects to the universal mind, and how surrender becomes not just a method for getting what you want, but a way of living that transforms you into a magnet for continuous miracles. You see, most people think of surrender as giving up, as admitting defeat, as resigning themselves to whatever life hands them. But true surrender, the kind I'm teaching you tonight, is actually the ultimate expression of spiritual power. It's not passive, it's actively choosing to align your individual will with infinite will. It's not weak, it's recognizing that you're connected to a source of strength that never fails. When you say, "I give this completely to divine love," you're not just releasing one desire, you're declaring your understanding that there is an intelligence far greater than your conscious mind that knows what will truly make you happy, that can coordinate circumstances you could never orchestrate, that can bring solutions through channels you've never considered. This intelligence doesn't live somewhere outside of you, it is the deepest part of you, the part that beats your heart, grows your hair, digests your food, heals your wounds, without any conscious direction from you. The same intelligence that manages all these miraculous processes in your body can certainly manage the circumstances of your life, if you'll just stop interfering with its perfect operation. Let me tell you about a revelation that completely changed my understanding of how prayer and surrender actually work. Early in my ministry, I believed that when we prayed, we were asking an external God to change our circumstances for us. I thought prayer was about convincing deity to intervene in the natural order of things on our behalf. But through years of study and experience, I began to understand something far more profound and empowering. Prayer doesn't change God, prayer changes us. When we pray, when we surrender, when we align our consciousness with divine love, we're not convincing an external force to help us. We're shifting our own vibration, our own mental atmosphere, our own magnetic field to attract experiences that match our transformed consciousness. Your subconscious mind is not separate from universal consciousness. It is your individual access point to the infinite intelligence that governs all creation. When you surrender your desires to this intelligence, you're not handing them over to someone else to handle. You're integrating your conscious desires with your subconscious power, which is connected to all the power in the universe. This is why the results of true surrender often seem miraculous to outside observers. They see only the external manifestation, the unexpected money, the sudden healing, the perfect opportunity appearing out of nowhere. What they don't see is the internal shift that preceded the external change, the moment when fear transformed into faith, when struggle transformed into flow, when separation transformed into connection with the infinite source of all good. I want to share with you a story that illustrates this principle so clearly it gave me chills when I first witnessed it. A woman named Margaret came to my lectures regularly for months, always sitting in the same seat, always taking careful notes, but always looking deeply troubled. After one evening service, she approached me with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Murphy," she said, My husband has been unemployed for 18 months. We've lost our house, we're living with relatives, and our marriage is falling apart. I've been praying and affirming and visualizing for him to find work, but nothing is happening. I don't know what else to do. I could see immediately what was happening. Margaret was praying for her husband while feeling desperate about their situation. She was affirming prosperity while vibrating poverty. She was trying to use spiritual principles while remaining in a consciousness of lack and limitation. I explained to her that she couldn't create prosperity for someone else, but she could create a consciousness of abundance that would influence their entire family situation. Instead of focusing on her husband's unemployment, I taught her to surrender their entire financial picture to divine love and to begin affirming abundance for herself, knowing that her shift in consciousness would create an atmosphere that would benefit everyone around her. But that seems selfish, she protested. Shouldn't I be praying for him instead of for myself? This is a common misunderstanding about spiritual law. We think we're being noble when we focus on other people's problems and ignore our own consciousness. But the truth is, you can only give from what you have. If you're vibrating lack and worry about someone else's situation, you're actually adding to their problems rather than solving them. I taught Margaret to begin each day by saying, I live in divine abundance. My family lives in divine abundance. We are provided for in ways that exceed our ability to ask or imagine. I give our entire financial situation to divine love, knowing that perfect solutions are already prepared for us. But here's the crucial part. I taught her to feel these words, not just say them. When she affirmed abundance, she had to genuinely feel abundant, even in their reduced circumstances. When she declared that perfect solutions were prepared, she had to actually sense the presence of those solutions in the invisible realm, waiting to manifest. This wasn't easy for Margaret at first. Her logical mind kept presenting evidence of their problems, the empty bank account, the rejection letters, the stress in her husband's face. But gradually, she learned to acknowledge these surface appearances, while holding firm to the deeper truth of their divine provision. Something remarkable began to happen as Margaret's consciousness shifted. Her husband noticed that she seemed calmer, more peaceful, less anxious about their situation. This reduction in household tension allowed him to approach his job search from a more confident, relaxed state of mind, rather than from desperation. Within 6 weeks, a neighbor mentioned that her brother-in-law was looking for someone with her husband's exact skills for a position he hadn't even advertised yet. The job paid more than his previous position, and came with benefits they'd never had before. But even more remarkably, during the interview process, the employer was so impressed with her husband's calm confidence and positive attitude that he created an additional consulting opportunity that doubled their income potential. Margaret later told me, Dr. Murphy, the miracle wasn't just that my husband found work. The miracle was that I learned I have the power to create an atmosphere of abundance around our entire family. I realized that my job wasn't to fix his unemployment. My job was to maintain faith in our divine provision, and let that faith create the conditions for our good to manifest. This story illustrates something profound about the nature of consciousness and manifestation. Your individual consciousness doesn't exist in isolation. It's constantly influencing and being influenced by the consciousness of everyone around you. When you surrender your concerns to divine love and maintain a vibration of trust and abundance, you're not just changing your own experience. You're creating what I call a field of blessing that touches everyone in your sphere of influence. This is why families often experience breakthroughs together. When one person truly surrenders and shifts into faith, their new consciousness creates an opening for miracles that benefit the entire household. Your peace becomes contagious. Your trust becomes magnetic. Your faith becomes a beacon that attracts divine solutions not just for you but for everyone you love. But there's an even deeper level to this that I want to share with you. Something about the nature of divine timing that will help you understand why some desires manifest quickly while others seem to take longer, and why the waiting period is actually a crucial part of the miracle itself. Divine intelligence doesn't just consider what you want. It considers what you need to become in order to receive and maintain what you want. Sometimes the delay between asking and receiving isn't about divine intelligence being slow to respond. Sometimes it's about you needing to grow into the consciousness that can handle what you've requested. Let me give you a personal example. Early in my career, I desperately wanted to reach more people with my teachings. I prayed for larger audiences, bigger venues, more influence. I was sincere in my desire to help people, but looking back now, I can see that I wasn't ready for the level of responsibility that comes with wide influence. I needed to develop deeper compassion, greater wisdom, more genuine humility. I needed to learn from the intimate counseling sessions with individuals before I could effectively address thousands. I needed to make mistakes in small settings before I was entrusted with larger platforms. The years I spent building my understanding, person by person, conversation by conversation, were not delays in answering my prayer, they were the answer to my prayer. Divine intelligence was preparing me for the influence I thought I wanted by ensuring I would use that influence wisely and lovingly. When the larger opportunities finally came, the books, the radio programs, the speaking engagements, I was ready not just to enjoy them but to steward them properly. The waiting period had transformed my motivation from ego-driven ambition to genuine desire to serve. The delay had actually been divine acceleration, preparing me to receive more than I had originally asked for. This is why I now teach people to add this phrase to their surrender. Divine love. I give this desire to you, and I also give you permission to prepare me to receive it in the most perfect way. Sometimes what we think we want isn't actually what our soul needs for its highest development. Sometimes getting what we want immediately would actually harm us or limit our growth. Divine intelligence sees the whole picture of your life, not just where you are now, but where you're going, what you're becoming, how your gifts are meant to serve the world. It coordinates the timing of your manifestations not just with your desires but with your soul's deepest purpose and your highest development. I want to share another story that illustrates this principle beautifully. A young man named David came to me several years ago, frustrated because he had been affirming and visualizing about starting his own business for 3 years with no apparent results. He had a clear vision, he had done market research, he had even found potential investors, but every attempt seemed to fall through at the last minute. "Dr. Murphy," he said, "I know I'm meant to be an entrepreneur. I can feel it in my bones. But every door seems to slam shut just when I think it's opening. I'm starting to wonder if I'm deluding myself about my calling." As we talked, I discovered that David's business idea, while potentially profitable, was based primarily on his desire for financial independence and recognition. There wasn't anything wrong with wanting these things, but they weren't connected to any deeper sense of service or contribution to others. I suggested that he surrender not just his desire for business success, but his entire career path to divine love, asking to be guided to work that would fulfill not just his financial needs but his soul's purpose. This was difficult for David because it meant letting go of the specific business plan he had invested so much time and energy developing. But David was sincere in his spiritual seeking, and he was willing to trust the process. He began each day by saying, "Divine love, show me how to serve in a way that will bring me joy and abundance while contributing something meaningful to the world. I release my attachment to any particular form of work and trust you to guide me to my perfect livelihood." Within a month, something unexpected happened. David's elderly neighbor, a retired craftsman who made beautiful furniture as a hobby, had a stroke that left him unable to continue his woodworking. He asked David if he would help him complete a few pieces he had promised to customers. David had always enjoyed working with his hands, but had never considered craftsmanship as a serious career option. As he worked in the old man's workshop, learning techniques that had been passed down through generations, something awakened in him that had been dormant for years. He discovered that creating beautiful, functional objects brought him a satisfaction that no business plan ever had. The customers who received the furniture were so delighted with the quality and artistry that they began recommending David to their friends. Word spread about this young craftsman, who combined traditional techniques with contemporary design sensibilities. Before long, David had more custom orders than he could handle. But here's the remarkable part. The business that emerged organically from following his authentic passion proved far more profitable than the original business he had been trying to force into existence. More importantly, it provided the kind of deep satisfaction and sense of contribution that made success feel meaningful rather than hollow. David later told me, "Dr. Murphy, I realize now that those 3 years when nothing seemed to be working weren't wasted time. Divine intelligence was protecting me from pursuing something that would have made me money but left my soul empty. The delays were actually divine guidance, steering me away from what I thought I wanted toward what I actually needed. This story illustrates a crucial principle about surrender and divine timing. Sometimes when doors keep closing, it's not because divine intelligence is denying your request, it's because there's a better door waiting to open, one that leads to fulfillment you couldn't have imagined when you were focused on your limited plan. This is why the attitude with which you surrender is so important. If you release your desires with resentment, feeling like you're being forced to give up, you'll miss the subtle guidance that's trying to redirect you towards something better. But if you surrender with genuine curiosity and trust, saying, "Show me what you have in mind, because I know it will be more perfect than what I can imagine," you open yourself to possibilities you never would have considered. I want to teach you something about the period between surrender and manifestation that most spiritual teachers never address. This period, which I call the sacred pause, is not empty waiting time, it's active spiritual preparation. During this phase, divine intelligence is not only arranging the circumstances for your good to appear, but it's also preparing you to recognize and receive it when it arrives. Many people miss their miracles because they're looking for them to appear in the form they expected, through the channels they anticipated, according to the timeline they preferred. But divine solutions often come disguised as ordinary opportunities, everyday encounters, simple insights that don't seem particularly miraculous at the time. During the sacred pause, practice what I call divine alertness, a state of relaxed awareness, where you're peacefully confident that your good is on its way, while remaining genuinely open to the form it might take. This means paying attention to seemingly small synchronicities, following intuitive promptings even when they don't seem related to your desire, and treating every person you meet as a potential messenger from divine intelligence. I remember a woman who had been praying for healing from chronic fatigue for several years. She had tried every medical treatment, every alternative therapy, every spiritual technique she could find. Finally, in exhaustion and desperation, she completely surrendered her health situation to divine love, saying, "I've done everything I know how to do. If you want me to be healthy, I trust you to show me how. If not, I trust you to give me grace to live peacefully with whatever limitations I have." 2 weeks later, she was standing in line at the grocery store, when the person in front of her dropped a magazine. As she bent to pick it up, she noticed an article title that caught her attention: "The Hidden Connection Between Chronic Fatigue and Unresolved Grief." She had never considered that her physical symptoms might be related to emotional trauma from losing her mother 5 years earlier. This simple magazine article led her to a therapist who specialized in the mind-body connection, which led to a breakthrough in processing her grief, which led to a complete resolution of her fatigue symptoms within 6 months. The healing came not through any of the medical or spiritual modalities she had tried so desperately, but through a random encounter in a grocery store line that occurred only because she had finally surrendered her agenda and opened herself to unexpected guidance. This is how divine intelligence often works, through what appears to be coincidence, but is actually precise orchestration of circumstances, to deliver exactly what you need exactly when you're ready to receive it. Your job during the sacred pause is to remain alert to these seemingly ordinary miracles, while maintaining peaceful confidence that perfect solutions are unfolding. Let me share with you another aspect of surrender that has profound implications for how you live your daily life. True surrender creates what I call present moment abundance, the ability to find joy, peace, and gratitude in your current circumstances, while your desires are manifesting in the invisible realm. Most people postpone happiness until their desires manifest. They think, "I'll be happy when I get the job," or "I'll be peaceful when my health improves," or "I'll be grateful when my relationship situation works out." But this attitude actually delays the very manifestations they're waiting for, because it maintains a vibration of lack and incompleteness. When you truly surrender, you discover that your happiness, peace, and gratitude don't depend on external circumstances. They're qualities of consciousness that you can choose in any moment. This doesn't mean pretending that challenges don't exist, or that you don't have genuine desires for change. It means recognizing that your essential well-being is not contingent on getting what you want when you want it. I learned this lesson in a profound way during a period of my life when everything seemed to be going wrong simultaneously. My health was poor, my finances were strained, a relationship I valued was ending, and my work felt frustrating and ineffective. For weeks, I fell into the trap of thinking that my peace of mind depended on solving these problems. One morning, sitting in my study feeling overwhelmed by the weight of all these concerns, I had what can only be described as a moment of grace. Suddenly, I realized that in that exact moment, sitting in my comfortable chair, breathing easily, with sunlight streaming through the window and birds singing outside, I actually lacked nothing essential. My problems were real, but they were problems with circumstances, not problems with life itself. I began to notice all the good that was present in my experience right then. The warmth of the sun on my face, the fascinating play of light and shadow on the wall, the remarkable fact that my heart was beating and my lungs were breathing without any effort from me, the amazing reality that I could form thoughts and feel emotions and make choices. As I shifted my attention from what was wrong with my circumstances to what was right with life itself, something extraordinary happened. I felt a deep peace that had nothing to do with my problems being solved. A peace that existed alongside the problems, that wasn't threatened by them or dependent on their resolution. From this place of present moment peace, I was able to surrender my concerns to divine love, with genuine feeling rather than desperate hope. And from this authentic surrender, solutions began to appear with remarkable speed and efficiency. Not because the peace had caused the solutions, but because the peace had created the consciousness that could recognize and receive the solutions that divine intelligence was already providing. This experience taught me that present moment abundance is not only a beautiful way to live, it's actually the most effective manifestation strategy. When you can be genuinely grateful for what is, while peacefully anticipating what's coming, you create a magnetic field that attracts your good more powerfully than any amount of desperate desiring ever could. Let me teach you a practice I call gratitude bridging that will help you cultivate this present moment abundance while your desires are manifesting. Each morning, before you state your desires and release them to divine love, spend 5 minutes acknowledging the abundance that already exists in your life, but don't just list obvious blessings in a mechanical way. Really feel into the miracle of your existence. Feel gratitude for the fact that you woke up this morning with thousands of bodily functions operating perfectly without your conscious control. Feel amazement at your ability to see colors, hear sounds, taste flavors, feel textures. Feel appreciation for the people who love you, the experiences that have shaped you, the opportunities that are available to you. Notice the abundance of beauty that surrounds you: flowers, clouds, music, laughter, the expressions on people's faces, the way light moves through your environment. Recognize the abundance of knowledge available to you through books, conversations, experiences. Appreciate the abundance of choices you have in every moment: what to think, how to feel, where to direct your attention. As you build this consciousness of present moment abundance, then state your desires from a place of already feeling blessed, rather than from a place of feeling lacking. The energy behind your request will be completely different. It will come from overflow, rather than emptiness, from expansion rather than contraction, from celebration rather than desperation. This shift in the energy of your asking creates a corresponding shift in the energy of receiving. Instead of your desires arriving to fill a desperate void, they arrive as natural extensions of the abundance you've already acknowledged and appreciated. Now, I want to address something that sensitive, spiritually minded people often worry about. Dr. Murphy, is it selfish to have personal desires? Shouldn't I only pray for world peace and the healing of others? Isn't focusing on my own needs and wants somehow unspiritual? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of spiritual development and service to others. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot be a source of peace for others if you're anxious and troubled. You cannot help heal the world if you haven't learned to accept healing for yourself. You cannot teach abundance if you're vibrating lack and limitation. Your personal happiness, peace, prosperity, and health are not separate from the world's well-being, their contributions to it. When you're living from joy rather than struggle, from trust rather than fear, from abundance rather than scarcity, you're radiating these qualities into the collective consciousness of humanity. You're modeling what's possible. You're proving that these states of being are achievable. Moreover, when your personal needs are met through divine provision, you're free to focus your attention on serving others, rather than constantly worrying about your own survival and security. The most generous, loving, effective people I've known have been those who learned to receive abundantly, so they could give freely. But here's the key. Your personal desires must be aligned with your soul's purpose and connected to your desire to serve something greater than yourself. Desires that come purely from ego, from the need to prove your worth, control others, or accumulate possessions, as status symbols, create inner conflict that blocks manifestation. Desires that come from your authentic self, your genuine need for health, security, love, creative expression, and meaningful contribution, are actually divine impulses, promptings from the infinite intelligence that wants to express itself through your unique gifts and circumstances. When you surrender these authentic desires to divine love, you're not asking for selfish gratification, you're asking to be provided for so that you can fulfill your highest purpose. You're requesting the resources, opportunities, and circumstances that will allow you to give your best to the world. This is why I teach people to always include service in their surrender prayers. Instead of just saying, "I give my financial situation to divine love," add, "so that I may be free to contribute my gifts generously to others." Instead of just releasing your health concerns, add, "so that I may have the energy and vitality to serve life fully." Instead of just surrendering your relationship desires, add, "so that I may experience love deeply enough to be a source of love for others." When your personal requests are connected to your desire to serve, they become prayers that divine intelligence delights to answer, because they're aligned with the fundamental creative principle of the universe, which is love expressing itself in ever more beautiful and beneficial forms. I want to share with you one final story that illustrates the ultimate transformation that occurs when surrender becomes not just a technique you use occasionally, but a way of living that permeates every aspect of your existence. Several years ago, I received a letter from a woman named Elizabeth who had attended my workshops for many years. She wrote, "Dear Dr. Murphy, I wanted to tell you about something remarkable that has happened in my life. For the first 35 years of my adult life, I lived in almost constant anxiety, always trying to control outcomes, always worried about the future, always feeling like I had to figure everything out and make everything happen through my own efforts. Then I began practicing the surrender principles you taught. First with specific desires: my health, my finances, my relationships. Each time I genuinely released a concern to divine love, miracles would happen. But something even more wonderful has occurred over the years. I've gradually surrendered my entire approach to life. Now, instead of waking up each morning with a list of things I need to make happen, I wake up curious about what divine intelligence wants to accomplish through me today. Instead of trying to force my agenda on every situation, I look for ways to align my actions with the flow of grace I can sense around me. The result has been extraordinary. My life has become an adventure of constant synchronicities, unexpected blessings, opportunities that appear exactly when I need them, people who show up with exactly the help or information or companionship I require. It's as if the entire universe has become my partner in creating a life more beautiful than anything I could have planned with my limited human perspective. But the most amazing part is the peace. I no longer lie awake at night worrying about problems because I've learned to place every concern in divine hands the moment it arises. I no longer feel the burden of having to be in control of everything, because I've experienced over and over again how much more intelligently life flows when I cooperate with divine intelligence, rather than trying to override it. I wanted to thank you for teaching me that surrender is not giving up, it's the ultimate spiritual power. It's how we align our individual will with the will of infinite love, and in that alignment, miracles become natural, peace becomes constant, and life becomes a continuous expression of divine creativity. Elizabeth's letter moved me deeply because it describes what I consider the ultimate goal of spiritual development. Not just getting what we want, but becoming the kind of people who naturally attract good, Because we're living in harmony with the fundamental creative forces of the universe. When surrender becomes your default response to challenges, when your first impulse in any situation is to ask, how can I align with divine intelligence here? Rather than, how can I control this outcome? Your entire life becomes a manifestation of divine love, expressing itself through your unique personality and circumstances. This doesn't mean you become passive or lose your individuality. It means you become an active creative partner with the infinite intelligence that is always seeking to express itself in more beautiful, beneficial, harmonious ways. You retain your free will, your personal preferences, your unique gifts and perspectives, but you use all of these in cooperation with divine will, rather than in opposition to it. As we truly come to the close of our time together tonight, I want to leave you with what I consider the most important understanding of all. You are not separate from divine intelligence. You are not a small, limited being trying to convince a distant God to help you. You are an individualized expression of infinite consciousness, equipped with all the creative power of the universe, temporarily forgetting your true nature, and gradually awakening to the magnificence of what you actually are. When you surrender your desires to divine love, you're not giving them to someone else, you're integrating your conscious desires with your subconscious power, which is your personal access point to universal creative force. You're aligning your surface mind with your deeper mind, your human will with divine will, your individual intelligence with infinite intelligence. This is why surrender works so reliably and so magnificently. You're not depending on external intervention, you're activating the creative power that is your birthright, your essence, your deepest truth. You're remembering how to work with life instead of against it, how to use the current instead of swimming upstream, how to dance with the universe instead of wrestling with it. The peace, joy, abundance, health, love, and fulfillment you seek are not distant goals that you might achieve someday if you're lucky. They are qualities of the consciousness you already are, temporarily obscured by the belief that you're separate from your source but always available the moment you remember your true nature. Surrender is the pathway back to this remembrance. Each time you release a concern to divine love, you're taking a step away from the illusion of separation and toward the reality of your oneness with infinite good. Each time you choose trust over worry, faith over fear, allowing over forcing, you're awakening more fully to the magnificent being you've always been. Your desires will manifest, I have no doubt about this, because I've seen it happen too many times to count. But more importantly, you will discover that you are the source of everything you've been seeking. The love you want to receive lives in your heart, waiting to be expressed. The abundance you want to experience flows through your consciousness when it's aligned with gratitude and generosity. The peace you seek is the natural state of your soul, when it's not agitated by the need to control outcomes. This is the ultimate miracle of surrender, not just that it brings you what you want, but that it reveals who you truly are. You are divine love in individual expression. You are infinite intelligence in personal form. You are creative power learning to use itself consciously and lovingly. From this moment forward, approach every desire, every challenge, every opportunity from this understanding. You are not a beggar pleading for crumbs from life's table. You are a beloved child of the universe, heir to all the riches of divine consciousness, equipped with unlimited power to create experiences of beauty, joy, and service. Surrender your small, fearful thoughts about yourself along with your specific desires. Release your limited beliefs about what's possible for you along with your concerns about particular outcomes. Give your entire sense of identity to divine love, and discover that you are far more magnificent, far more powerful, far more loved than you ever dared to imagine. This is my final gift to you tonight, not just a technique for getting what you want, but an invitation to remember what you are. Use the daily release ritual. Practice the gratitude bridging. Cultivate present moment abundance. Engage in divine detachment. Meditation, but understand that all of these practices are simply ways of returning your attention to the truth of your being, which is love, wisdom, power, and peace. You came into this life to remember your divine nature and to express it through your unique circumstances, relationships, and contributions. Every desire you have is actually divine impulse, seeking expression through your individual consciousness. When you surrender these desires to divine love, you're not giving them away, you're allowing them to be fulfilled in ways that serve not only your personal happiness, but the highest good of all life. Live from this understanding, my dear friend. Walk in the confidence of your divine heritage. Trust in the infinite intelligence that beats your heart and grows your hair, and heals your wounds to also orchestrate the perfect fulfillment of every authentic desire of your heart. You are loved beyond measure. You are provided for abundantly. You are guided perfectly. You are never alone, never forgotten, never without the resources you need for your highest unfolding. Give everything completely to divine love, and watch your life become a continuous miracle of grace, beauty, service, and joy. Until we meet again in that place where all souls recognize their oneness in divine love, I hold you in the light of infinite blessing and boundless possibility. Divine love is working for you right now, and always, and in all ways. With deepest love and highest blessings, now and forever.